Hi everyone, I'm Alex and this is Navneet. So today we're going to talk about scaling Redux apps. So before I begin, is everybody familiar with what Redux is, right? We don't need to go into the details, right? Okay. So we're developers on Azure DevOps, and Azure DevOps is Microsoft's DevOps platform. So we offer, place to put your code for Git. We offer work item tracking like agile tooling, CI/CD, package management, all the good stuff that you need to build software. So it's free, so you can go use it today. So we're a really large-scale React and more recently Redux app as well. So for some numbers, we have like thousands of React components for a huge application, a huge suite. So tons of components. Lots of developers. We're in the hundreds of developers. We have hundreds of independent views, or what we call hubs, right? So these things are all kind of independent, like apps, really. And then each one of these views is composed of several pretty complicated widgets, right? So lots of data being shown around. So real quickly, because this is in. So this is one of our pages, right? So this is like my team's backlog, actually. So I don't know if there's any interesting information here. But what we have here is, here we have like the work item tracking solution, the code solution, all these things. And then we have all of these pages for them, right? So like we have a board, we have sprints, we have queries for your work items, and then repos has like pull requests and everything. So all of these are like really kind of separate but complicated React pages and React apps, kind of. So for the backlogs page alone, we have like this backlog grid, so that requires all of its own data, and it has all of its own business logic and fetching and all of this lifecycle stuff. We have the header, which controls like the teams, so this is some more business logic, lots of state management here. And we have this separate planning view as well, which can go away, and we can like put some other views here, right? And these all have different information. So we kind of need to be able to pull in and pull out different views and state and logic and all this stuff, right? And they kind of all need to work together, but also be reusable and independent. So recently, it used to be, when I started on this team, we had our own Flux infrastructure. And we ran into some problems with that. So Navneet and I looked outside and we said, everybody else is using Redux, so why don't we try Redux for some of our new experiences? And we quickly ran into a number of challenges when we were trying to implement Redux in our application. So one of the first challenges was, we just have a large number of everything. We have a large number of components, we have a large number of state, everything just kind of grows, right? You have tons of reducers, tons of actions, tons of middleware, it all kind of blows up. And it's really difficult to organize and reuse all this code, right? So that was our big challenge. And the second challenge was, because our app is so big, we don't want to load everything at once, right? We have that pane that kind of can switch in and switch out. So we want to load those components only when we need them. We only want to download those scripts when we need them. That's really easy to do with React, but it's a little bit harder to do with reducers and middleware for some reasons that we'll show you. So we looked around and we tried to find some Redux libraries that would help us achieve or surpass these challenges. We couldn't really find any, right, that did all of it. So we wrote one. So we wrote redux-dynamic-modules. This is our modular approach to Redux. So you can go check it out here, and we'll send the slides and post a link after the talk as well. So yeah, we wrote this library. So and we posted it. We published it, what, like 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
A week or two ago. And we posted Hacker News, and we actually got some pretty good traction from Mark Erickson, who's one of the core contributors to Redux. So he gave us a little plug, and he's pretty excited about it. And I think we'll actually include it in some of the Redux documentation or some of the recipe pages that they'll have later. So keep a lookout. So anyway, to use our library, there's 3 simple steps. So the first step is to create what we call a module, right? So before in vanilla Redux, you have all these reducers, you have sagas, you have all these small components, right? And they're everywhere. So the first thing to do is bring them all together into a module, right? So group your common reducers and sagas, bring them into one module. So everything is brought in here. We define a module with an ID, reducer map. So here are the reducers for my module, and any sagas or middlewares that I want to run as part of this module. So we put them in one place. So with this, it's really easy to import this module. If I create a common generic module and I want to reuse it somewhere else, I just have to import it, right? And I get everything in one go. The second thing is you have to create a store. So I forgot to add the import, but this is a configure store function that we wrote. It kind of creates like an extended store. So the API looks the same, but instead of adding reducers, we add our modules instead, right? So when I add this module to the store, everything in that module is now part of the store. So any sagas that were part of it get run in the saga middleware. Any reducers that were part of it get added to the state, and it all just kind of works. And it's the same kind of API that you're used to. And then the third thing that you can do is inject additional modules at runtime. So if we have that pane that comes and you open a pane or you open a dialog or you add a widget to your page and you only need that state when that stuff is visible, then you can use our higher order component dynamic module loader, and when this thing gets rendered, then the module gets added to the store dynamically. And when it goes away, the module goes away too. So pretty nice. So Navneet will take a widget app and kind of convert it into use our library.
Yeah. Hey. So
here.
Oh. So here I have a very simple app, like we just said, just to show the power of the library and then see how it is easy to use it. So in this app, I just have to simple two checkboxes. When I click on them, it loads two widgets, right? Pretty simple for weather and for Hacker News. Now, both of these widgets, I'm using React loadable here. So both of these widgets are loaded dynamically. But what happens is, just refreshing the page. See, I'm using Redux DevTools. And what's happening is, if you see, both of my states for each of these widgets is loaded, even though the widgets are not there. Because, why? Because when I'm configuring the store, I need to give it all the reducers that it needs. Right? So now I want to show the Hacker News. I have the state. Now I disable the Hacker News, but the state is still there because I cannot clean it up. Right? So this is the core problem that we have. And the same thing happens for other middlewares, or if you have sagas, then for your sagas. So let's see what's there. So now let's look at the code.
Can you hear him without this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So again, it's a very simple app. We have it on the repo in one of the examples, so you can check it out later. But we built it using Create React App, so pretty simple to get started. So can you see all, or should I increase the font?
See it.
Okay. So here I have app.js. It's my root component. Again, this is Redux code. I'm setting up my initial state for the component. This doesn't go into the store. It is just for the checkbox state. And then I'm setting up my reducers, one for my weather, and I have a weather reducer. I have Hacker News. I have my Hacker News reducer. So even though I'm not loading the widgets, the app component should ideally not know about any of these widgets because the widget should be dynamic. But because in Redux, I need to give it all the reducers up front, I need to define it. And the app component needs to know about it. Because it needs to know about it, it needs to load those scripts. So it impacts performance as well. Same thing goes for my middleware. So we are using, so just to show how interesting the library is, we are using two middlewares in this app, Saga and Thug, because people use different things and our library supports both of them. So here I'm creating Saga middleware. And when I'm creating the store, I'm just giving enhancers. I'm giving it middleware for the Saga as well as Thung. The other thing is, even though my weather widget is not shown, I need to run the Saga in advance because there is no way where I can run it later. It's not that easy to run it later. Okay. Now, to look at my components, I have two folders, Hacker News, Weather. I've organized them where I have the component files here, their actions, reducers, and sagas. Okay. So now let's see what it will take us to convert this to using our library, right? How easy it is. So let's start with Hacker News first. So let me create a file here. Again, I will be copy pasting. So here, to create my module, I imported my reducer for the Hacker News. Because this is a Hacker News module, it's okay if it references them. This is my action, which is a thunk. Go back to my module. So here I have given it as ID. I give it a reducer map. So a module can have one or more state keys. Ideally, the modules have one state key, but you can have one or more state keys. Now, what happens that whenever you're loading modules, you will have to initialize some data, right? So you can dispatch some initial actions when the module is loading. Many times we do it in component.mount, but then it's not good. But if you are using modules, this is an additional benefit where you can say, oh, when I'm loading the module for the first time, dispatches actions. So here I'm dispatching a fetch stories action, which will fetch stories, Hacker News stories from their APIs. And if there is any cleanup that I need to do, I can dispatch some final actions, right? So you don't have to do anything in component.mount. Okay, so now the same thing, let's create a module for weather. Oops, JS. Okay, so what's interesting about this weather module? This module is not using thunk, it is using saga. So same thing, I give it a unique ID. We use it for ref counting, etc. So you need to give unique ID. I have the reducer map. Here I have an initial action, and in the previous module I dispatched a thunk, but in this module I'm just dispatching a regular action. And I have a saga. So redux-dynamic-module, it supports extensions. So we have written an extension for sagas, so it can understand sagas. So that extension will load the sagas or run the sagas, whatever you want. So now our modules are ready, right? Again, I didn't have to touch any of my code, my existing reducers, my existing actions. It just works out of the box, right? So now let's see how we can load these modules dynamically. So this is my index.js file for my Hacker News component, and I'm just exporting my connected component, right? This component I defined here. So these are all functional components, and at the bottom I'm using redux-connect to connect the component to the store. So, and for now I'm just exporting as a default, my current component, right? Now I need to connect this component to my module store. So what we do is, here I'm importing my connected Hacker News, same as before. I'm importing my module, the module that we just wrote. Now we created this HOC, high order component, similar to Redux's provider or connect, where what I can do is that I can, when this component mounts, I can give it a list of modules that I want to load when the component mounts, and I can see what other inner components it should be mounting, the children components. So whenever now this dynamic Hacker News module mounts, it is going to load these modules into the store, and whenever it unmounts, it will remove the stuff from the store, right? So now everything I need to render my Hacker News widget is here, right? It knows its states, it knows its reducers, it knows its side effects, libraries, middlewares, and everything. Let's do the same thing for my weather module. So again, same stuff, the weather module, dynamic module loader, connected weather. I'm just giving the list of modules, and again, it's an array, so you can give n number of modules. If you have any dependencies, you can define them here as well. Okay. So now let's clean up our Appjs. Let's see what all things we don't need. So now my Appjs doesn't need to know about middlewares, reducers. It doesn't need to create the Saga middleware. It doesn't need to know about Thunk because it doesn't care, right? It doesn't need to know about all these reducers and sagas. The only thing it needs to know about is, we'll just import So again, as Alex said, this is our configure store, which is coming from redux-dynamic-modules. This is an extension for our modules, which for Saga, for Thunk, because I'm using both middlewares, but we don't have to use both.
You missed a comment slash.
Thank you. Now, oops. So now our constructor for our app becomes simpler, right? I don't have to combine reducers because initially I don't want to load any reducers. I don't need to load the middleware, and that's it. I'm just saying store, this is, you are going to use Thunk and Saga because that has to set up initially. We support where you can load these extensions dynamically as well as middlewares, but here we are using it this.
Extra brace.
Yeah. And that's it. I think I have an error here. Oh, this is why we have extra brace. Right? I don't have to change anything else because those were just working with React. There was some code I had here.
Right there.
Yes. So when I was loading these components, I had to dispatch actions for them to load the data, right? But now because I have initial actions in my modules, my app doesn't need to know about that as well. So I'm just going to remove it. Okay. So to summarize, we created a modules, referenced our reducers, middlewares there. We wrapped our components, the connected component into dynamic module loader. And then what we did is that we configure our store, and now we are rendering our dynamic components here because they are coming from index.js, so I don't need to change any code here. Now let's see the same app. Wow, and it builds. Okay. Yeah, live demo and builds. So you see right now I have no state, right? It's the same app. Earlier I had Hacker News and Weather, even though null state, but because I had to configure my reducers, it was there, right? But now it's not there. Let me load Hacker News.
Do you have any scripts?
Oh, I don't have any. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Good question, Alex. So let's see.
You do now.
Oh, I do now. But we can refresh. And because I didn't load any reducers, I don't have any scripts. Neither my component scripts nor my reducers or action scripts here, right? So it's improving my performance, right? Neither for Hacker News nor for Weather. We actually don't know anything about these components as of yet. Now let me load just Hacker News. What happens? Now I have my state for Hacker News, right? Oops. And I have my Hacker News reducers and modules and actions loaded. Let's see what happens. when I hit the extension, and now my state is clean, right? There's no good way to unload the scripts, but that's what it is. We can clean up our stores. The saga that was running, it's gone. Now let's load weather. What happens? Now in my state I have weather, and I have all the weather scripts loaded. Let's hide weather. State is gone. Right, and then you can bring them back. Right. So we are using this in production, and we are seeing really good results with this.
Yeah. So just gonna check. So yeah, just to quickly wrap up. So hopefully that was a kind of cool demo. Shows you like kind of the power of the library, what you can do. So to sum up, you can with this library you can easily like organize and reuse this code. So we created these modules, right? And you can just include them and use them, right? And they're kind of self-contained units that you can just import and use. The other advantage is you can define and register everything in one place. So if you looked at the original application you had to define the reducers in one place, you had to run the middleware in one place, you had to run the sagas in one place. Now you just define it all in one place and load it, right? And lastly, like we showed you, you can load things at runtime and kind of leverage this code splitting for everything now, right? It's not just limited to your components. So. Yeah, so we've been using it in production for like last month or two, and we're really happy with it. It's really kind of increased. It's made it easier to teach people how to use Redux, and it's made it easier to kind of just organize all our stuff. So you can go check it out and download it today and give us some stars. But yeah, so it's redux-dynamic-modules. So thanks.